All right. So here's some news stories. That thing will supposedly come up. So I just thought this was interesting. I've heard a lot of things about whether you should charge your phone all the time, and they explain it pretty nicely here. And the most common advice I've heard appears to be true, that the worst thing for your phone is getting it hot, and it's also very bad to get it to 0% or 100%. You really should keep it between 20 to 80% for the maximum battery lifetime, so that's reasonable. And this is very interesting, and this is the CEO of X, formerly Twitter, and she was put in when Elon Musk said he was going to step down from being a CEO because everybody was so mad at him, but he didn't really step down, and he continues to set policies and just do it by tweet the way Donald Trump did. And so she went to a conference, and they'd ask her important questions, and she wouldn't know the answers. She would say what she thought was what the company was doing, and then they'd say, well, Elon just tweeted something else. So she's really just sort of a useless figurehead, and her job is to bring back the advertisers, but they can't get Elon Musk to stop pushing alt-right Nazi content, and which is what scared the advertisers away. But she just had to lie and say that, oh, we're making plenty of money and everything's fine and all the advertisers are coming back, when none of that was true. And they totally caught her flat-footed. So she was so humiliated that she canceled her appearance at the next conference. And this reminds me of something you guys should know. You should all be listening to the Pivot podcast. This is incredibly important because of Kara Swisher. Scott Galloway, I like him a lot, but he's not as important. Kara Swisher is the main active ingredient here. She is probably the most powerful journalist in tech by far, and business, and she is deadly like Woodward. Woodward is famous for causing political people to lose their position. He's done since the Vietnam War. He is very good at bringing important people to dinner with him and somehow persuading them to leak all their secrets. And she does this to people. She's destroyed several companies completely just with an interview on this podcast. Because she interviews people, and somehow she is good enough, she gets them to admit the stuff they don't want to admit. And so she interviewed Linda. She set up the conference, and she isn't even the one that interviewed Linda Yaccarino. She interviewed Yoel Roth before her, which was the guy who was running safety at Twitter. And Yoel Roth was very dignified, but anyway, that raised enough disturbing questions that Linda Yaccarino could not answer, that she was utterly humiliated. And her position is insane. She can't possibly survive anyway, which is what the people on this podcast said, because she's in a position of somehow pretending to be the CEO when Elon Musk is the real CEO, and trying to tell people that Twitter's a serious business being run according to professional standards when it absolutely is not. And so she's just there basically to be a sacrificial lamb to get blamed for things and fired after a while, which is almost certainly what's going to happen. This is a problem in the security community too. You'll find it in management courses like the one I'm teaching tonight. They talk about this. A lot of security people are hired just as sacrificial lambs. It's a thing to be aware of. You might be giving an order, well, secure this company, and yet you'll get no money, no resources to do it. So all you're going to do is be blamed when we get hacked. So it's a thing to be aware of.
She should have known when she took the job.
Yes, she should have known. Absolutely. Everybody else could see it.
The previous job was marketing.
Yes, that's why she was.
She got a pay raise to go with the trouble, so she should have known.
Oh, you're right. You're right. She should have seen it coming. She probably believed some of Elon's lies and thought she could cover up for him. This is what tends to happen. People, just like Donald Trump, the people keep volunteering to be ground under Donald Trump's machine. There's a hypnotic effect of these oligarchs that are super rich. When you get near them, you think, this is great, and I'll just do whatever they want, and everything will be fine. It's, anyway. So, this is interesting. Stanford has settled with the Justice Department because they have been getting grants for research, and the researchers also are working for universities in China, and when they're doing that, they have to disclose that because it might create a conflict of interest, and they were not disclosing it, and they even were not disclosing when people had already contracted themselves to work full-time at the Chinese university and therefore didn't have any more time to allocate to these other grants. So they're going to pay a nominal fine of a few $1 million and try to improve their disclosure things. They're not getting punished very much. But it does bring up the issue, which is increasingly popular to consider these days, that American technological research is very, very, very integrated with China. and the universities are very integrated with China. I mean, I'd rather collaborate with China too. I'd rather be going to DEF CON China.
Everybody anyway.
Well, yes, but now that we're getting very hostile towards China and we're trying to make tech embargoes against China, then I guess we're going to have research embargoes with China, and I really don't like any of it happening, but that does seem to be what's happening. We're moving to an increasingly hostile position where we don't cooperate or trade ideas anymore. So Novo Nordisk took Ozempic and they applied it not only for diabetes and weight loss, but for kidney disease. And it was so successful that they stopped the trial early. This is something that happens when you do a clinical trial. If your drug really works, they end the trial early because it's no longer ethical to do a trial where you have people you give it to and people you don't give it to. You decide to give it to everybody because you're so sure it works. And that happened here. So this Ozempic stuff has already become the most important company in Denmark, and it's raised the whole European stock market, and it's going to change the world. This drug is a miracle drug, curing many really important diseases that affect a huge number of people. It's going to be, everyone's going to be on this drug within a few years, pretty much, or half of everybody, and it'll reorganize the entire economy. A huge amount of money will come from it. So here's an interesting study. I mean, I've been kind of saying college doesn't seem to be worth it that much anymore in America, especially if you go to colleges where you go greatly into debt. But here's another study showing the thing before. They've said this for years, that if you go to college, you will live longer. You have more money, you can afford more stuff, you can afford more doctors, presumably. Perhaps you're more aware of medical discoveries. Anyway, the gap between people with and without four-year degrees is like 4 to 6 years. And in the pandemic, the lifespan of Americans fell by a couple of years, but the gap remained between college and no college. So there is a statistically large effect of a 4-year degree on your lifespan in America. A thing to be aware of. So this I thought was pretty entertaining. So Home Depot, many American retailers are closing their shops because they have so much theft. They have organized theft where people bring in gangs of people and steal large amounts of merchandise. And so Home Depot had that problem. So they, in Florida, so they went and analyzed who was doing it, and it turned out that it was the local pastor. There was a pastor running a drug recovery program, and this guy is like Fagin from Dickens. He would get the people in drug recovery to go steal stuff and bring it back to him, and he would then sell it for money, and required them to go steal things for him, just like a ringleader. So there's a thing to be.
Like the TV series, Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, I didn't know Orange is the New Black had it, but it goes all the way back. This is.
It's the same thing, same kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. This is a real old idea. Like I say, Dickens had it, where you have like a guy who runs a bunch of like younger people to go steal for him because then he doesn't go to jail. He's the kingpin. So anyway, and it's often very common that somebody with a position of respect like this is doing something dirty like this because people won't suspect them. Anyway, so this is interesting. I've read several articles about this, medical research. They take pigs and they genetically modify the pigs so they can grow organs you can implant into humans. And they're making real progress here. I think they did like 23 genetic alterations in the pig to make the organs acceptable to the human body. And when they tested it by implanting it into a monkey, they can now have a successful transplant for the long term of, I think, kidneys. Yeah, they're able to grow kidneys in a pig, and now they are accepted in a primate. So this is really important because there's a lot of humans that need kidneys and livers, and there aren't enough available. So if you could grow them in an animal model, that would be a great way to get a supply of them for all the humans that need them. There aren't enough donors. So I mentioned before, there was this Predator Files thing which came out from Amnesty International and another human rights group where they found a whole bunch of journalists being infected on their cell phones with this Predator malware. And so people are now calling on a worldwide ban on spyware. I think that's silly and idealistic and impossible. That would be like a worldwide ban on guns or something. It might sound nice, but I don't think it's going to happen. The government and all the spy agencies and all the military and all the police use spyware like crazy. I don't think they're going to have a worldwide ban on it, but these people would like to see that. And Android, this has been something that's been known for a long time. If you buy cheap Android devices, they tend to be insecure, and sometimes they come with malware pre-installed on them, and there's now a bunch of them that come with backdoored firmware where people have just active bot malware on them. And a lot of them have made it in schools because I guess it's the cheapest sort of TV signal generating device. So a bunch of schools have bought it, and now they got these devices, and they say the malware is in the firmware and you cannot remove it. So they're going to have to throw those devices away and buy more expensive ones. So that's a thing to know about. And Cisco has this thing called Emergency Responder, which connects to their phone product, I think to make 911 calls, but it has a vulnerability, and I've heard about this vulnerability more than 9 times in the last few years for Cisco appliances. It has an unchangeable, hard-coded root password. This is an ancient technique. You'll see it in the movie Tron. This is what people used to do 2 or 3 decades ago. They would have a secret back door in there for tech support. Nobody's supposed to be doing that anymore, but Cisco is still shipping products with that flaw. That's a serious flaw. And it just shows that Cisco has got some coding techniques that they're still using that are like 30 years out of date. They ought to have compliance and security audits of their code that catch these things, and apparently they don't. Although they did catch this internally, apparently. So apparently they are beginning to scan their stuff, but only after it's been shipped in this case, so that's not so good. And so here's, there is a company that now has a face searching algorithm on the web. Google developed it and then didn't deploy it because this is incredibly dangerous. You can take a snapshot of somebody, then you can use image matching to find all the other pictures of them. You can find their hometown, their job, their friends, their family, so you can stalk people and take revenge on people and blackmail people and stuff. You know, it turned out they made the technology and then they said, you know, this is too dangerous to distribute, but some company has distributed it, PimEyes. PimEyes is apparently it, where you can just take a picture of anybody and it will find everything about that person from the picture. So I don't know where this company is based. They say it was originally founded in Poland. If they're in America, I think they will be sued out of existence in a hurry. But anyway, it's a thing to be aware of. The technology exists, but the consequences for privacy and security are pretty drastic. Anyway, I'm going to stop.